Jacked up August 13th, 2024. As we inch down the month of August, we get closer and closer to football season, and another inkling that it's closer to football season. The Pittsburgh Steelers' time at St. Vincent College in 2024 is all about wrapped up. One more practice at St. Vincent and then a joint practice with the next preseason opponent for the Steelers, all before week 1, September the 8th against the Atlanta Falcons. The Steelers now 0-1 in 2024 preseason play, a 20-12 loss to the Texans last Friday. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some training camp storylines and, of course, everybody's favorite topic, Brandon Aiyuk and the potential of him becoming a Pittsburgh Steeler and where that story is. With all that, we welcome in Steelers beat writer with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Ray Fittipaldo, kind enough to join the show. Ray, first of all, thanks for taking some time this evening. I have to ask you right off the bat, what is the latest on Brandon Aiyuk? It seems like there was a lot of development and then it stopped, and now we're kind of inching back to more and more of a story here with a potential trade.
Yeah, so nothing has really changed from the Steelers' perspective. They have had a contract worked out with Brandon Aiyuk, and really the ball is in San Francisco's court like it has been for the past week or so. When the 49ers accept, the trade offer, then it's going to be done. And I think it's going to be done, relatively soon. But listen, Jack, I said that last week as well. Brandon Aiyuk does not want to be a 49er. He wants to play for the Steelers. So it's a matter of when the 49ers are going to cave. I'm thinking it's probably going to be this week or next week, but, you'll have to stay tuned until the 49ers make that decision.
How much of his situation and being very selective with where he wants to play, right, in a day where a lot of stuff can get out, there were reports that New England and Cleveland had maybe a better offer than what the Steelers potentially have on the table, but Aiyuk doesn't want to play there. So how much really is Aiyuk's contract situation and really how much control he has over this situation how much is that hindering the 49ers right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to point out, the NFLPA and really players overall have it the worst of all the team sports. MLB has a really strong union. They make boatloads of money. And I give Aiyuk and his agent credit for leveraging the 49ers the way they did. The fifth-year option is a sore spot for NFL players. They don't feel like it's fair. They want to get to free agency faster. They say, hey, why? I'm a first-round pick. Why am I being penalized because I was one of the better players coming out when I was in college? So I get it. And like I said, I give them all the credit in the world for putting the pressure on the 49ers. It's a unique thing. We saw a couple of years ago with the Steelers how a hold-in could be effective. Deontay Johnson got a contract from the Steelers when he when he held in. So Aiyuk is doing the same thing. Unlikely that he's going to get a contract from the 49ers, but nonetheless, he's leveraging them to the point where he's going to make it that he gets traded to the Steelers in all likelihood.
You think definitely by week 1 then?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the 49ers can play hardball. They can do that. They can take this as far as they want. At that point, Aiyuk would have to make a decision. Does he take this into the season? He could hold out until week 8 or week 9 without losing a year of service. So, he'd have to take that into consideration. But I think cooler heads will prevail, Jack. The 49ers are a Super Bowl contender. I don't think they need or want this distraction. So I think keeping that in mind, it's going to be done before week 1. I just can't say if it's going to be tomorrow, the weekend, or next week, but I do think it's going to get done relatively soon.
Yeah, something we're going to keep an eye on for sure. Training camp pretty much all but wrapped up at St. Vincent College. The team off Tuesday the 13th, one more practice up there at St. Vincent before they return to Pittsburgh and have a joint practice with the Buffalo Bills before they take them on in the preseason. So with that, let's talk a little bit about maybe some of your training camp takeaways, if a couple of them stick out to you. What has really been something that maybe has opened your eyes in practice at St. Vincent?
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to talk about the quarterbacks. I think with good reason, Jack. Justin Fields came in here with a little bit of baggage, from his 3 years with the Chicago Bears, a lot of interceptions, issues with his accuracy. And, I think for the most part, after an up and down first week when they didn't have the pads on, I think he's been pretty good. And I'm not suggesting that he's going to unseat Russell Wilson as the Steelers starter, but I do think the Steelers now know they have a pretty viable option as a backup if Russell Wilson gets injured again, or, if this calf injury doesn't get any better before the start of the season. So that's probably the number one storyline. I think the number two storyline is the development of this offensive line. Rookie Troy Fautanu was in line to be a starter before he got injured. We'll see how that plays out. Maybe that throws a wrench into things, maybe not. And also Zach Frazier. Zach Frazier is having a really good camp. It's a rookie out of West Virginia. And, Nate Herbig is holding him off to this point. But, I only think it's a matter of time before Frazier is a starter as well. So, those two big draft picks coming through looking like the real deal. I think that's another positive for the Steelers as the season gets closer.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin talks about all the time, in stadium reps is the Tomlinism he likes to use. As far as in stadium reps go, I mean, how much maybe even more valuable are they for a rookie center like Zach Frazier? Because I feel like the scuttlebutt was for the first couple of weeks of camp, maybe Nate Herbig as his veteran might have the upper edge, but it seems like since that first preseason game, the script has almost flipped at center. And I think a lot of people might be even betting on Frazier to start week one.
Yeah, he didn't have any fumble quarterback center exchanges.
Yeah.
So, that's a positive after Herbig and Fields had too. And I'm not putting the blame on Nate Herbig whatsoever. I think that's a dual thing. That's on the quarterback and the center, but Zach Frazier did a good job in that regard. So he looks the part, Jack. He is big. He is sturdy. He can move people up front. He's been pretty solid in pass protection too. Listen, all rookies are going to go through growing pains. I think with the first half of the Steelers schedule being somewhat easier than the second half, I think it does make sense to let those rookies get their feet wet in the early part of the season. So, they're in better position to be better players later in the season. We'll see if it turns out that way for Frazier and Fautanu, but they're off to really good starts.
Yeah, your colleague Jerry Dulac reporting that Fautanu is in a position to start week one, and that was obviously before he had some knee problems and things of that nature. But how much of that do you think actually, let me rephrase. When do you think maybe the Steelers kind of came to that decision? If they did, like, okay, this guy's going to be our, week one tackle, either left or right. When did you think they kind of realized that he was potentially going to be a week one starter?
Troy has been terrific in the one-on-one pass rush drills throughout training camp. Put him against TJ Watt. He does really well against him. Same with Nick Herbig on that side of the line. So he's been really good there. Came in with a really good reputation as a run blocker, and they haven't been disappointed in that regard either. So they put him in there with the ones last week. He played really well until he got hurt. So I'm guessing Jack, it probably was at some point in practice last week. We all know he struggled in the game, didn't have two good reps, against Donnell Hunter and Jerry Hughes. But that's not going to let the Steelers aren't going to let those two sacks factor into their decision. Their decision was made before that, and I think once he's healthy, he's going to go right back in there.
What does that do to Broderick Jones? I mean, I think the consensus is that Fautanu's future is at right tackle, and they drafted Jones to be the left tackle. So what does that do immediately for Broderick Jones? I mean, it obviously throws him into the left tackle conversation, I think, but is there maybe more of a competition over there with him and Dan Moore now?
Yeah, they're gonna battle it out. Dan Moore is the incumbent 3-year starter at left tackle. Broderick Jones was last year's number 14 overall pick, who played left tackle at Georgia. So it's his natural position. You would think, Jack, it wouldn't take too much time for him to get comfortable over there again. As far as the timeline goes, I'm not sure. It's probably on hold a little bit because now Broderick has to play right in the games, and Troy's not going to be back for the Bills game or the Lions game. So, that timeline is a little bit up in the air right now. But I think you don't draft a guy in the first round and then have him sit behind a guy whose contract is up at the end of the year. So I can't promise it's going to be week one, but I do think it's going to be early in the season that Broderick Jones is the starting left tackle.
And as we kind of cover our local college allegiances here in the Ohio Valley, as far as West Virginia goes, we talked about Zach Frazier. The other Mountaineer making a little bit of waves, Beanie Bishop, still atop of the depth chart, the one that was just released recently ahead of the second preseason game at nickel corner. So talk a little bit about Bishop and what maybe he's done to earn that spot. And is he maybe in jeopardy of falling out of the first team in that regard, or is he still kind of firmly holding on to the first team reps at nickel corner?
Yeah, listen, first off, Beanie has had a really good camp. They're not disappointed in Beanie Bishop whatsoever, but, they're not going to just let an undrafted rookie free agent come in here and earn that starting job without some competition. So this past week, Graylin Arnold, a veteran, took the reps with the ones. Beanie was with the twos, but Mike Tomlin said not to read too much into that. So they're going to let that competition play out. Graylin's a guy who's made some plays in camp, was injured early. Now he's first week where he's back to full strength. So he's a vet in this league. He's got some starts under his belt. So we'll see if he can unseat Beanie. But as you mentioned, Beanie is still the starter on the depth chart. And, I think these games, both against the Bills and the Lions, will be important, not only for Beanie, but for Graylin Arnold as well as he tries to beat him out.
And then as we continue to cover the bases, we talked about Justin Fields as we shift to Buckeyes. Defensively, Cam Hayward still, it seems, without a contract extension. And we all know, as people who cover the Steelers and Steelers fans know, they're not typically known to negotiate contracts in season. Right. Is this a unique case with Cam Hayward if this doesn't get done before the end of the preseason? And if it doesn't, are we really looking at a situation where it's got to get done in the offseason or he's playing in a different uniform in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I could be totally wrong on this, Jack. I don't think they're going to give Cam Hayward a new contract before the season starts. He's 35 years old, and he's coming off a season that was ruined by core muscle injuries, and those are sometimes hard to come back from. So I think the positive is, Cam has kind of played hardball. He said he's going to test free agency if he doesn't get a new contract. But as well as I do, once that Steelers season ends, let's say it ends in mid-January after another playoff loss, you got 2 months until free agency kicks in March. You can go ahead and get a deal done late January, anytime in February, or the first 2 weeks of March, and you can make Cam Hayward happy. So I know Cam has said what he said, but just because he doesn't sign before the start of the season, I'm not necessarily closing the door on his return in 2025.
I think Najee Harris is probably in the same boat as far as if anything were to get done with him. But I think a lot of people were optimistic that Pat Freiermuth would ink an extension at training camp. Where are those talks? Where have they gone?
Yeah, not much has happened since July 24th when they reported. I think maybe this Aiyuk situation could factor into that. If Aiyuk comes, the number that people are projecting is $28 million a year. Now, it doesn't have to be structured that way, especially in the first year. He could have a signing bonus that's prorated, and that cap number could be lower. So Freiermuth could still likely get done, but I think they kind of want to resolve that one way or the other before they dive into negotiations with Pat. So, it's not going to be nearly as expensive. I think you can get Pat done for, 12 or 13 million a year. I say only, but that's the going rate for a tight end of his caliber. So, between the two, between Cam Hayward and Pat Freiermuth, I think they can get one done with Freiermuth easier than they can get one done with Hayward for sure.
And it's no secret, Pat Freiermuth gearing up for an expanded role in an Arthur Smith offense this season. I think a lot of fans were anxious to see what that looked like in preseason game number 1 against the Texans, but only 12 points on the board. Steelers lose. As much as you could have, Ray, what did you take away from the Arthur Smith offense in game?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the one stat that popped out to me was they had 5 passing plays of 20 yards or more, and they really spread that around among a bunch of different receivers. Scotty Miller had a big 38-yard catch. Calvin Austin had 2 for 49, so he had a couple of, I think he had a 24 to 25-yarder. And they had some other guys contribute. Najee Harris had that screen for 16 yards. So, they were able to make some big plays. I think, we already talked about it. The biggest issue for the offense in that game was the QC exchanges, and that just killed those couple of promising drives when Justin Fields was in the game. So listen, if you can get the running game on track, you can cut down on those mistakes. Arthur Smith talked about it yesterday when he met with the media. They have a lot of team speed. George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller's a fast guy. They want to take advantage of that speed, and with speed, usually big plays follow. So we'll see if they can keep that up against the Bills and the Lions as they close out the preseason.
What did you make of the new kickoff?
I didn't like it. I mean, it was just kind of blah to me. I mean, it seemed like every kick was, returned to like the 25 or the 30-yard line. And in that case, Jack, why not just put it on 25 or 30 and just eliminate the play altogether? So, it's funny. They tried to eliminate it, encouraging touchbacks because they were worried about player safety. And now they're saying they want excitement back in the game and they want to bring the play back. So which is it? Are you worried about player safety or are you worried about excitement? So I don't know. Maybe teams are holding off and they're going to unveil their good stuff when the games count. But I was not impressed with what I saw from either team on Friday night.
Yeah, and speaking of player safety, and I'm going to bring this up because you brought it up, James Daniels wore the Guardian cap in the preseason game, and that's something that players can do now. I think 4 or 5 Indianapolis Colts, including Jonathan Taylor, wore one in their preseason game as well. Is that something that, because I haven't been up there, obviously, as much as you guys have from a media standpoint, is that something that anybody's asked Daniels or Mike Tomlin about? And if so, what were the responses in that?
Yeah, check out the Post-Gazette on Sunday. We're going to have a story just on that subject. And James Daniels has been pretty outspoken about the Guardian cap since they came into existence. So he's been on board with this. I can't say that other Steelers have been. He was the only Steeler who did it on Friday night. And, it's interesting. The NFL has a doctor, who sort of oversees the entire player safety aspect of the league. And he says that technology, that Guardian cap technology, eventually it's going to be incorporated into the helmet. So maybe into the padding or, somehow it's not going to be that awkward cover of the helmet. So, probably not for 2025, but eventually I think 2026, 2027, all that new technology will just be a part of a new helmet. And, players will have that protection no matter what.
Yeah, we'll have to check that out on Sunday in the Post-Gazette. Before that, Saturday, the Steelers and the Bills, 7 p.m. at Acrisure Stadium. But before that, the Steelers joint practice with the Bills Thursday afternoon inside the stadium. What do the Steelers look to get out of team practice or joint practices, I should say? Obviously, Mike Tomlin said early on in camp that that'll help as far as being able to learn the new kickoff goes. But what are some other things that will benefit the Steelers as far as a joint practice goes?
Yeah, I just think seeing different competition. You've been going up against the same defense and the same players for 3.5 weeks now. So I think playing against a different opponent is always helpful. The one thing I remember about the joint practices with the Bills and the Lions probably 10 and 12 years ago was the last time they had them. There were a bunch of fights, and I know Mike Tomlin has spoken out about that. He doesn't want to see that. That's how guys can get injured. But it always seems like when two teams get together, Jack, that you always see some highlights on TV about the fights that take place. So we'll see if that happens at Acrisure on Thursday. But if I know Mike Tomlin, he's going to be telling his players to behave in that manner. But, hey, things get heated and it's football, so we might see some fireworks no matter what.
So you're saying that we can't expect a scuffle up with former Steelers quarterback Mitch Trubisky?
Mitch Trubisky. How about Chase Claypool?
Him too. And I think Deion Kane is also on the Bills, who had a cup of coffee.
That's a name from the past. Actually, Chase Claypool he's got some, I don't want to say enemies, but he was not well liked by some Steelers in that locker room, especially on the defensive side. So you might see that. Who knows?
And as far as Saturday goes, Ray, anything in particular you're going to be keeping your eye on for the second preseason test? I guess the biggest thing is whether or not Russell Wilson will play. If you want to talk a little bit about that and some other things you're keeping an eye out for in preseason game 2.
Yeah, so yesterday, Monday's practice afterward, Mike Tomlin said he was undecided on whether Russ would start that game. So I think Mike is going to talk with the media either Wednesday or Thursday after the joint practice. So we should have some, we should have some word by that point within the next day or two. And as far as what else I'm looking for, just play cleaner, offense and defense. Mike Tomlin was really steamed about, the poor play by both the offense and defense in third down situations. And, that's where the Texans scored a couple of their touchdowns, and that's where the Steelers couldn't score. They couldn't move the first down chain. So, just play cleaner, clean up those QC exchanges, and, see if the offense can do a little bit better.
Ray Fittipaldo, Steelers beat writer in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Check him out. Ray, you're the man. Thanks for taking some time tonight, and we'll see you down the road. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jack.